Hello, I'm Gary Stearman, and this is Prophecy Watchers. With me today, Mondo Gonzales. And Mondo, we have some exciting things in the near future coming right up.
Yeah, we do, Gary. We have a conference, our imminent return conference coming to Norman, Oklahoma, so we certainly want to invite you to come. Certainly in person is the greatest time to be there. But if you can't make it in person, we want to invite you to join us through our live stream. You can go to watchersweekend.com to get all the information about that. There's going to be 24 speakers, even a mystery speaker that we're excited to reveal, and as well as over 45 messages, Gary. It's going to be a tremendous time for people to fellowship together and learn some good stuff.
Well, people like L.A. Marzulli, of course, Billy Crone, all the people, the voices, Tom Hughes, the people that you've seen here, and who have a lot to say. And by the way, speaking of a lot to say, your new book, I think, is going to be featured, and I think you're going to be talking about that new book, right?
I'm certainly going to be mentioning the what I'm calling the Red Heifer update, which goes along with the book. I was trying really hard to get the book out because there's some time factors that are coming into play.
And Mondo, your new book is, I think, a kind of a surprise. Well, I know when I read the manuscript, it was a surprise to me because this is an amazing prophetic subject, but it has something that I don't think any other prophetic subject has in our day, and that is drama. There's drama in modern Israel right now for people who are watching Israel. And of course, we are Israel watchers. And his book is called The Red Heifer Ritual. And it's something that's not just theoretical. It's not just in Numbers 19 in your Bible. It is in Israel today, and it's dramatically working its way to the surface in a place where holding an opinion can get you in a lot of trouble.
What you have here is this. There's a lot of confusion. What should Christians think? Should we care? Should we be excited? And so I wanted to address all those things as we're coming up to a very important time, which is October of 2023 is the beginning of the countdown, because maybe I'll start there for a moment. 5 red heifers were brought into Israel on September 15th of 2022, and come October of 2023, they will come of age. And that's just one of the qualifications for them in order to be slaughtered. And so we're coming into a point where we could really be seeing over the next few months one of the aspects of prophecy being fulfilled right in front of our eyes.
Absolutely. Now, when you read Numbers 19, which is the mention of the red heifer, has to be a perfect red heifer without spot or without blemish, and it has never done any work. That is, you've never yoked it up and used it for work. It has to be pristine, perfect, no off-colored hairs. And it has to be prepared by someone who is already in a status of cleanliness in terms of the priesthood. In other words, there are a lot of requirements. Plus, you have to find a place to do this. Mm-hmm. Now, we look at Israel today. And you've got this tremendous ritual coming up, a purification ritual, and it has to be done in a certain place, in a certain way, at a certain time, by certain people, wearing costumes of a certain kind, mm-hmm. probably. And as you look at all the qualifiers, this is no small item, Mondo. As I went through this again and read your book, I'm thinking, this is dramatic. This is dramatic stuff.
It really is, because when you look at the Bible, this isn't just make-believe. The Bible gives prescriptions, as we see in Numbers 19. It has to be red. It has to be a female cow. It has to be in its 3rd year. It has to be have no yoke on it.
Yes.
It can't be blemished. I mean, you can't have a scar on it. But it's interesting. So what I tried to do in the book was, one of the chapters I discussed was, what does the Bible say? Well, the Bible does say this is a biblical reference. But then in the third chapter of the book, I tried to discuss, okay, well, what do the Jewish rabbis have to say? Because rabbis have their Jewish tradition. We call it the Mishnah or the Talmud. And so you have all these other complications that they've added in addition to the Bible, and that they are trying to fulfill. And so we talk about, for example, a red heifer. In their mind, you can't have more than 2 non-red hairs coming out of the same follicle. Well, that's not in the Bible, but wow. they've come up with this. that this is their new rule, or this is their rule, how they interpret it. And so it's really fascinating. I know a lot of people don't have access to the Talmud or the Mishnah. And so I said, okay, I'm going to give you the quotes. A lot has been written since 200 AD about this particular slaughter. And so I wanted to help people understand. I'm not saying I agree with the Jewish people here, but I wanted to help people understand their frame of reference.
Sure.
So when they're trying to do some of these things, you're like, well, why are they doing that? Because they're trying to follow the oral tradition.
Now, should they succeed, they gather the priesthood. They gather the right people at the right time with the right red heifer. They burn it. They get the ashes. What are they going to do with those ashes? And how are they going to use the ashes under what circumstances? And you do talk about these things.
Yeah, what I think is interesting is if you read in the Bible, in Numbers 19, we don't, as Christians, we don't really think about this too often. We don't think of being ritually unclean because we're not going to a physical temple. We think about spiritual cleanliness and being cleansed by the blood of Jesus, which certainly his sacrifice did for us. But when you have a temple, what you see, Gary, is God would say, if you come in contact with the dead person, now you're ritually unclean for 7 days. And so what God was doing is he was giving them an opportunity to have a cheap way that you wouldn't have to offer a sacrifice every time you became ritually unclean. God had one sacrifice that he was giving for the nation, and by burning the red cow and mixing it with water, you could go to the priest and you could just be sprinkled with the water, and then you'd be declared ritually clean. That was cheap. God was very gracious in providing them a very inexpensive way to become ritually clean so they can participate in the temple services or whatever, because for the most part, it would be expensive to have to go. I mean, maybe a family member dies, and this happened during the wilderness wandering. People are dying, all of them are dying off, and so they're becoming ritually unclean. Well, by God doing this, he was very gracious in providing a way. So for them today, they realized that in order to participate in the temple services, they need to there was two things. They either needed to find the ashes of the red heifer from the first century, which they have not found, or... By
the way, they've looked.
They've looked, and you and I have talked about this. Yeah. They've looked for can we find the ashes of the previous red heifer, but they have not. So right now they're determined, okay, we're going to go look, we're going to find a pure red heifer so that we can slaughter it fresh and we can have it mixed with ashes and water. And so then we can use it today, not only to cleanse people who would be participating in a coming third temple, but that they could cleanse the Temple Mount itself.
Now, this is a complex ritual that must be exactly performed in a ritually appropriate place. For example, before the temple or before the tabernacle. Are all of these things coming together so that this can actually happen, Mondo?
I think that's what excites me the most is, we've been watching for the red heifer for a long time, and the first red heifer that really was popular was in the early 1990s. And, the thing is, one would come up, they would inspect it, they would be excited, it would become disqualified, it would grow some black hairs.
Right.
Another one would come up, and so through the last 30-some years, 35 years, it's been happening. But the fascinating thing is why it's important now is not only do they have 5 that are in Israel that they've flown over, but there's 16, 20 more that are in ranches in Texas waiting if the other ones don't work. So we're in the era now, the era of candidates not being disqualified. So it is going to happen. And this is the first time, again, in almost 2,000 years, that a red heifer has come to be available. And interestingly, I give the background in the book about the current status of the 5, but also the whole modern search, as well as the medieval search for the red heifer from the first century.
Wow. Well, we're going to pause now so that you can see how to get our magazine, monthly magazine called The Prophecy Watchers. When we come back, I want Mondo to go into a little more detail.
In case you haven't noticed, the whole world is spinning out of control, but we are not surprised because many of the things taking place were prophesied in the Bible thousands of years ago. That's why we want to offer you a very special subscription to our magazine, The Prophecy Watcher, that will keep you on the cutting edge of Bible prophecy. Stay informed on prophetic world events. Follow the nuclear threats from Russia and Iran, China's march to world domination, the likelihood of another global pandemic, the rise of artificial intelligence and transhumanism, war in the Middle East, the UFO phenomenon, and the latest technology preparing the world for the mark of the beast. With your gift of $50 or more to support the worldwide outreach of Prophecy Watchers, you will receive 12 issues of the magazine in either print or digital format. You will also receive 10 bonus DVDs that feature in-depth teaching on the ancient book of Enoch, Heaven and the New Jerusalem, the biblical case for the rapture, a look at how God put the gospel in the stars, what really happened at the Tower of Babel, and Ezekiel's prophecy on the Battle of Gog and Magog. This special offer is available anywhere in the United States with free shipping included. Don't wait. Pick up the phone right now and call the toll-free number on your screen or visit us at prophecywatchers.tv. Stand with us today and help us take the message of Christ's soon return to the whole world.
Well, we're back, and Mondo, I have something to ask you. Let's suppose we have the ashes of the red heifer right now, today. Where can they be used? That is, what physical location is there in Israel right now that would enable a priesthood to use or to apply the ashes of the red heifer ritually?
Well, the interesting thing about this, Gary, is that most people don't realize this. It's in not only the Bible, it mentions outside of the camp, which that phraseology appears in the book of Hebrews as well, Hebrews chapter 9 and verse 13, and in chapter 13. But what you see is that today that this particular slaughter has to happen outside of the camp. Well, in the Jewish writings from the, again, going back to 200 AD and even the Talmud, about 500 AD, they talk about the red heifer being slaughtered on the Mount of Olives, which is east of the Temple Mount area. So that's where the plan is to happen. And I talk in the book about the locations of that and how they've secured that. But once that happens there, they will then bring the ashes of the red heifer with the water, and they'll sprinkle it on the Temple Mount area in order for their minds to cleanse. Like you mentioned, it'll be sprinkled towards
this is dramatic. You know, tourists go to Israel, so they can stand on the Temple Mount, look to the east, see the Mount of Olives. They go over to the Mount of Olives, they look back to see the Temple Mount. I mean, and it sort of makes your blood run a little faster. It's exciting, it's dramatic, and you think, there could actually be a temple, there could be a priesthood, there could be a place that is significant ritually, historically. Having said that, where are they going to do all this and when?
Well, let's pause for a moment, because I think one of the interesting things that I tried to address is, Gary, we're excited, but are we excited about the third temple? Are we excited about the red heifer ritual? Well, yes and no. We're not excited in a very microcosm way for the third temple, but we're excited because when the third temple comes to be, when the red heifer slaughter comes to be, it's showing that prophecy is being fulfilled, which what we're excited about, we're not excited for the tribulation period. We're excited for Jesus' second coming. And these things are showing that Jesus' second coming is happening and coming very, very fast like a freight train, which also means that the rapture is going to happen prior to the tribulation. So I think this is one of the things that I did in one of the chapters was, what should a Christian think about all this? Should we be excited? And what I did was I decided to reach out to many prophecy teachers, 10 or 12, and to get their answers to say, should we be excited about this, and what their response was. And what I found interesting was that some prophecy teachers said we should be very excited, other prophecy teachers said no, we shouldn't, and others said maybe we could give money to the temple reconstruction, and others said absolutely not. So it's interesting that I tried to bring some prophecy teachers in and to share their thoughts on how should the Christian respond today. And I think that's some of the confusion that we have. And so I tried to clear up the confusion about, number one, what the Bible says, what the Jewish writings say, but also what we should think. But am I excited? I am excited, not so much for the slaughter of a cow, because Jesus is the final sacrifice. I'm excited for what it's showing, that we are in the era, which I think the rapture's coming soon, Gary.
I couldn't agree more, Mondo. Now let's talk politics. I hate to talk politics. Let's talk politics, and the politics are these. In Israel today, I think everyone knows there is a very dramatic lockdown in the Knesset, the House of Representatives of Israel. The Knesset can't come to an agreement on anything. Benjamin Netanyahu is having difficulty politically. Others who have tried to become prime minister have failed. The Israeli army is under siege on every border in Israel. All of the surrounding territories from Israel want to wipe Israel out. It's just a fact. So that's a setup for something that could be, shall we say, initiated in a few seconds with the launching of a single missile, as you well know if you follow Israeli politics. That being said, in all this dramatic setting, if you were to go out and go through the red heifer ritual to produce the ashes, that would have to be publicized. People would see this. The enemies of Israel would say, we can't allow this to happen. We're going to riot in the streets. We're going to do anything we can to stop the sacrificial preparation of the ashes of the red heifer. In other words, what I'm saying is, it could be very, very dramatic.
You know, Gary, it's interesting you bring that up because God has been very gracious in that He's allowed me to be able to interview the people who are at ground zero. I mean, I talked to two different gentlemen who were absolutely, they were there with the rabbis. I met another gentleman down in Dallas in December, and he said, Mondo, you're sitting exactly where the rabbis were sitting. And so I had the opportunity to get the full background story because there's a lot of misinformation I've been seeing online, and so I wanted to do the research and to provide the true source information. So I've tried to document it as best as I could with the interviews. But in one of the interviews I was able to do with Byron Stenson, he, again, from Boneh, Israel, I asked him, hey, when this slaughter takes place, I go, how public is it going to be? Because
right.
I said, what security you're going to have? The Arabs, they're not just going to stand by and just not try to cause trouble. I said, so there's a couple things here. They did talk. He said that the goal is to have a public ceremony. There would be security. It has to happen on the Mount of Olives. And again, in the book, I describe the two locations which they've purchased property, and I show those where they are on a map. And but I have a feeling that I think they're going to have a change of mind. I could be wrong, but the idea of having it more of a private ceremony so that it isn't so public, that it'll be after the fact. They'll come out and say, hey, by the way, last week we performed a ceremony. Now they would have it all documented, but to say, hey, next week, everybody, because they're talking about Passover of 2024, hey, next week we're going to have this big ceremony, everybody's invited. I don't know if that's the best course of action, and I don't know if they really would end up doing it that way, because talk about riots.
Oh, yes.
This is really, they would have to have the complete support of the government. Now, that's a whole other thing you talk about politics, and I'll just mention that I was told that permits have already been requested for this to happen from the government itself.
Wow. Now, that is good news. It's big news, and I say good news because I am all for Israel. I'm pro-Israel from many, many decades ago. I think we all think back to 1948. That was a huge change. It changed the world, I think. And there have been very, very adverse reactions to 1948, the foundation of modern Israel. And Israel's growth has been spectacular, but extremely controversial at every turn. And I believe the red heifer ritual it just fits into that whole movement. Like, let's face it, you wrote this book at the right time.
You know, I was feeling pressure because I had started it last year, And then, of course, the red heifers, I was kind of waiting to seeing if any of them would be disqualified. And as of current time, there's 4 that are 100% still qualified. 1 is on the border, not disqualified yet, but still maybe on the fence. But I realized that, again, come October, they'll be in their 3rd year. And so the countdown begins of October of 2023 when the typical modern rabbinic conclusion is they have to be 2 years and at least 1 month. So 2 years and 1 month brings us to late October or even into early November. And so that's when the clock starts going up until, they could wait till Passover of next year, but they have to be in their 3rd year. So they can't wait any longer than October of 2024. So this is exciting, Gary, to be able to see this develop in our lifetime.
Well, Mondo, all I can say is that I've been following this subject for years and years and years. But believe me, folks, I didn't get as deeply into it as Mondo has gotten, because he's a natural researcher. If anybody loves to go in and turn over rocks and find new things, it's Mondo Gonzales, right?
I enjoy it, getting in the nitty-gritty.
He really does. And let's just pause right now and let you know how you can get your own copy of the Red Heifer Ritual.
Christians have watched prophecy being fulfilled in Israel since 1948, but the rebuilding of the Third Temple has been an elusive journey. There's just one thing missing in their rebuilding efforts, and as you've heard today, it's the ashes of the red heifer. Mondo has tracked this event with great enthusiasm, noting the confusion and controversy that exists, both in Judaism and in Christianity. Mondo interviews the experts and the insiders, offering the very latest information on this unusual and mysterious event, and offering an indication of just how close this event may be. Should Christians be supporting Israel's attempt to rebuild their temple, knowing that one day the Antichrist will set foot in that temple and declare himself to be God? Where and how will this ritual slaughter take place? And how will the enemies of Israel respond to this monumental event? From a Christian perspective, does this event speed up the timeline of the rapture of the church? Are we that close to the tribulation? Mondo's book is the defining work on this subject, containing the latest updates from the experts and interviews with some of the leading lights in the world of Bible prophecy, along with a deep dive into Rabbinic Judaism. The Red Heifer Ritual book is available for your gift of $25 or more, with shipping included in the USA. It also includes a free bonus, a special DVD about the Temple Mount, its controversial history, and its future. We are also offering an exclusive Red Heifer package. It includes Mondo's new book and a live DVD presentation Mondo has prepared on the mystery of the Red Heifer. We've also added an informative book by prophecy expert Ron Rhodes, Israel on High Alert. And as our way of saying thank you for supporting our worldwide television ministry, we'll include another bonus DVD from one of our recent prophecy conferences. Mondo's Red Heifer book, the live hour-long companion DVD, and the bonus book and DVD is available for your gift of $50 or more, with shipping included anywhere in the USA. For our international friends, an additional shipping fee will apply. Thanks for watching today. Be sure to tune in to our program each week to hear all the latest discoveries in the world of Bible prophecy and the wonderful plan God has for your future. Until then, keep looking up.
And we're back talking to Mondo Gonzales. I'm Gary Stearman. It's always good to be with you, and in particular when we have some good news to talk about. Mondo, your book, I think, to me, it's an upbeat book. It's not a downer. It's exciting because something is actually happening of great biblical consequence in our time.
You know, that's one of the things, Gary, is what kind of motivated me is, there's been a lot of things that are going on, but for us in the prophecy world, we're talking about convergence. So this is a word that we use often about convergence, whether it's the mark of the beast or digital technology or a cashless society or the New World Economic Forum, the New World Order, famines, pestilences. But within the Third Temple movement, there's a convergence. And so when I saw all these things coming to be, I was like, I want to document this, because not only do you have the red heifers, you have, we talk about the religious, I talk about the way that the rabbis have changed their viewpoints in the last 30 years as it relates to the Temple Mount. I talk about, for the first time, we've seen the most religious government in the history of Israel from 1948.
Yeah.
That it's currently 64 members of the Knesset. You have a religious bloc. This is the first time. It has never been this religious. People go, well, isn't Israel religious? No, Israel actually was founded as a very secular country. The governments have always been either centrist. There's always been a little bit of religious groups in there, but never have they been the majority and the dominant. So here again, when you take all these things together,
Yeah.
and we begin to see the prophetic developments that not only of the Temple Mount, of the politics of Israel, the government of Israel, the abundance. We have an abundance of red heifers now, where before they were scant.
Right.
But now we have 5. There's 16 more in the wings. Things are converging pretty amazingly.
I'd like to end on one idea, and that is when you go to Israel as a tourist, one of the things you're sure to do is tour the Jerusalem Temple Institute. I'm sure you've
Yes.
been there. You've been all through it. And if you're with a tour group, you walk in there and it sort of gets quiet and everybody says, oh, ah, wow, I didn't know that. Whoa. You know, there's this sense of something big is about to happen when you go into the Jerusalem Temple Institute. And that's the feeling that sort of comes over me when I read your book. What about the witnessing of the building of the third temple? Wow, all you can say is, that's amazing.
Well, that's why the subtitle was the missing piece, the last piece of the puzzle, because as you mentioned, when you go to the Temple Institute, you can see they have the golden menorah, they have a replica of the Ark of the Covenant, they have all the utensils, they have the priest's clothing,
Yes.
They have all the other implements that are ready to go. I mean, they're ready, you can go see them. But the one thing that they've been working on, again, for behind the scenes, and the last piece has now arrived to finish all the pre-temple preparations, is the red cow.
And you're talking about that in great detail, I might add. Mondo has a unique way of looking at things. He can go into detail and not bore you to death, which I think is a gift. And your book is exactly written that way. So you've done something timely and good and dramatic. And, you know, we all love to see something dramatic unfolding, right?
I appreciate that, Gary.
Listen, I'm excited sitting here talking to Mondo. Keep watching. Watch Israel. There's internal drama. There's external drama. There are major league weapons involved. It's all happening right now. Hey, I'm Gary Stearman. You keep watching. We are